Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call this meeting to order of the Oakville Public Library Board for Thursday, the 15th of June, 2023. Members of the board, Madam Committee Clerk, are there any regrets this evening?
We have regrets from Councillor Chisholm.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? I'm not seeing any. Before we actually get into our meeting, I'd like to read the territorial acknowledgement before the proceedings begin. The Oakville Public Library is situated on the Treaty Number 14 and Treaty Number 22 treaty lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. Oakville is currently home to many different First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Regardless of where we come from, we are all interconnected through the land we live on, the water that we use, and the air that we breathe. We are committed to a continuous learning journey and allyship. We seek to elevate Indigenous voices and lived experience to cultivate reconciliation in Oakville. Members of the board, you have been previously circulated your minutes of the previous meeting. We did not have a confidential meeting, so just the public meeting from May 18th. What's your pleasure on that? Is there a motion to approve those? I hope there is. Thank you very much. Rebecca, is there a seconder, please? Andrew, thank you. All in favor? They're carried. We have two items on our consent agenda. The first one is the key agenda items for the board, and the second one is the health and safety report. Would anybody like those separated? If not, can I get a motion to approve those items as consent? Thank you, Bill. Seconded by? Thank you very much, Meredith. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We do not have any confidential consent items, and we move on to our discussion items, starting with 6.1, the collection development update.
So continuing on the board's journey deep dive into collections, we had our digital landscape report previously, and this one is more of a current update. Speaking to some of the challenges that we're facing as collections evolve in public libraries. In particular, our demand for multilingual, the children's collection has been an ongoing challenge for us. Digital collections, as was highlighted in the report previously, continue to be a challenge, as well as the growth in demand of what in the library industry is called the library of things. Things as are highlighted, the park passes, the life jackets, the sport kits, anything that's non-traditional, there is increasing demand. I get requests for things like CO2 detectors, fishing kits, bike tools, baking pans, things that people don't need on a regular basis but want to be able to access. And there are libraries throughout North America that offer all of those. So there are examples out there, but again, it can be challenging to fund those. And to date, as was indicated in the report, we've been cannibalizing our own collection budget to fund these additional collections, as well as using the surplus that we've been lucky enough to have over the number of years. However, our goal is not to have such large surpluses moving forward. So then how can we better plan for these budget challenges around collections moving forward? And so this report is in advance of the budget drivers report that will come in July that will really indicate to the board what are the key drivers behind the building of the 2024 budget. And this will play a role in that. And we will be asking as part of our budget request to the board in September or October of this year for $100,000 increase to that budget moving forward over the next 5 years, where we'll be able to do another analysis and kind of sort that out. It is a very detailed report, so I'm happy to take questions.
Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. I'll state that again. Members of the board, do you have questions? Celso.
Sounds like I always have questions. I think I have too many. With regard to the Library of Things, I think it's a fantastic concept, and it probably can draw more users, which is ultimately our goal, right? Correct. So, but the question in terms of the budget is it possible that there may be an impact in terms of the personnel? Because do you need specialists or any kind of different type of people that, in addition to be knowledgeable in books and how to, advise the public on that, will have to advise on tech and life jackets and whatnot? Is there a budget component for personnel training in addition?
There definitely could be. To date, we've been lucky enough to have partnerships that have helped with that. For example, the life jackets, we partner with Recreation and Culture. They actually select the life jackets for us. They actually clean them for us as well. So it's a partnership that's managed to work. One thing that we're also working to introduce is cognitive care kits for people to exercise their brain the same way they exercise their body. We're working with Acclaim Health to kind of develop those and use their knowledge to do that. However, there is a switch that we are seeing with staff, particularly around the ongoing maintenance of some of these devices, particularly the technology, or even how to display them properly, how to package them properly. Because a lot of the new kits, particularly the Tinker toys that we want to expand, or the loanable laptops that we want to start lending out, how do we package those where they're safe and secure when they go home, and how do we ensure that all the pieces come back? So there is definitely increased staffing resources that need to be dedicated to those types of pieces. We're lucky enough to have, our tech team is expanding, so they'll be able to assist more and more with the technology requirements of some of the pieces that are coming as demand. But I think the majority, what we'd be looking for would be form those partnerships. For example, like the bike tools, there are bike groups in the community that we would look to partner with. If we choose to do gardening tools, we'd speak with Oakville Greens or Halton Environmental Network, because I'm not sure we need long-term knowledge for that. I think if they can share their knowledge with us, that would be enough. But that's not to say that there might be other staffing requirements in order to circulate, maintain, and just process.
Yeah, I guess asked in a different way is what we wouldn't want to do is ask for the 100,000 to expand the library offering, but then have to find more money later on because we don't have enough staffing for the idea that we first proposed.
Yeah.
So the question is really, is 100,000 sufficient?
Yeah, and that also what Joe's team has been doing, and it was I think at some point it was hinted in there in that the surplus that we've had over the past number of years is due to gapping, and we've had significant vacancies in the collections department that we've been holding because we're restructuring to better support the Library of Things. So they've been introducing new positions, brand new positions, where it's written into their job description, this more increased knowledge, moving away from where it was just books and digital content to kind of take this into account, that we're dealing more with physical, non-traditional physical items. So we are counting that in terms of a restructure within that department.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. So next up is Andrew.
Thank you. I want to focus on the ebook collection specifically. When I look at the variance to past year's budgets, we're spending on average over $100,000 on ebooks alone. So I'm questioning the $100,000 per year figure in terms of how that would barely accommodate just our ebook needs at this point.
So which page?
Page 9, sorry.
Page what, sorry?
Page 9 of 13.
Okay, sorry, I was looking at the bottom, which is page 21 of 70. Gotcha.
So, in summary, 100,000 doesn't seem like nearly enough.
It's the minimum. But recognizing the fact that there will be significant budget pressures. This year, there'll be significant budget pressures. Next year, as we go to open the permanent 60-mile branch, the increase to the operating budget in 2025 will be significant. This was what we identified as what we would need to continue to not necessarily maintain the status quo, but allow us to because previously we never budgeted for the Library of Things. We've cannibalized that from other areas that we might be spending a little less in, for example, CDs, and be able to kind of shift that, as well as other areas. So the 100,000 would just allow us to plan better and kind of increase areas over time. So what we're looking for is not, it's 100,000 in 2024. It's another 100,000, which would continue to allow us. And I think it's drawn out one of the things here, how we would assign that to the different groups in order to grow that collection budget over time, to actually get it to where we need, which would be 5 years from now.
Okay. Coming back to the ebooks again, is there any development at all in terms of conversations with the publishers on the fees that they're charging and the terms?
So not that I know of. I haven't heard anything. I know that there's ongoing conversations. I'm not part of that group. They normally give us updates 2 or 3 times a year. They gave us the last one in January. I would hope that we would get another one in the next couple months. I know that they were, the last report that I highlighted, the different approaches that they were looking at, different, whether that be bringing forward federal legislation or provincial legislation, but a lot of that, it's a long road because we need to get in to see the minister, we need to get different ministries to agree, and the challenge, again, is that we could fall under at least 3 or 4 different ministries, and to date, they've all been like, that's not us, that's this. That's not us, that's this. We are starting to make progress. My understanding is that 1 or 2 of the ministers or ministers' assistants have come back and asked for more information. So we are gaining ground, but it is a marathon, not a sprint.
Got it. Okay. Can I request an update on that at the next meeting if possible, if there's any information? Thank you. Okay.
That's it. Thank you, Andrew. Further questions on this report? Thank you, Meredith. You're up. And then.
Just 2 separate questions. So the first one was about the discussion about the high usage of children's print materials, which is understandable. And I do recall, that there's quite a lot of books being donated through the Friendly Finds, et cetera. And I was just curious if any of those books that are donated are ever reviewed to be incorporated into the library's collection.
They are evaluated. When they come in, they go up to a sorting room, and we do have sorters that go through it, and I do identify particular authors or titles that they know and put those aside. Then they move down to collections, and collection reviews them, and then they get added to the collection if possible.
Okay, so that is a source of collections, like an in-kind source of
Correct.
Of collections for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I will say a lot of them are not in a condition we would put in.
Okay, fair enough. And then I did also just a quick question about the Library of Things, and I apologize if I missed it, but is there some kind of opportunity for us to see like the usage rate, like when you do offer like lacrosse kits or gardening kits, like is it generally like a wait list, like they're always used, or is it like we have all these offerings but some are used more than others?
No, we can actually provide that. A lot of those kits tend to be more spontaneous. So people kind of go in, grab them, particularly like things like the multi-sport kit at Iroquois Ridge that circulates really, really well because there's a giant park next door. So people will run over, grab the kit, and take it out. I don't even know, I'll have to check. We may not even allow holds on them, whereas like park passes and such that we would, but we can definitely provide you with maybe an overview of the last, I was gonna say 2 or 3 years, but we can look and see what we can do with our COVID and post-COVID data, because I think we introduced them just before, but we can take a check.
Yeah, okay. I think it just, especially if it's related to an increased budget, it'd be really great to see that there is like high demand, and that there would continue to be a high demand if we increase those collections in those particular areas.
Yeah, although I will point out, we're not necessarily looking to increase those collections, but add other ones.
Right, yes.
Yeah. But I hear what you're saying in terms of, do we add more sport kits when our current sport kits aren't that
Yeah,
popular?
or does the public know that this is a resource available to them, right? And that they're thinking of that, of the library for these types of things.
Correct, yes. Okay.
Thanks, Meredith. Avis?
So it's a great report. It was really helpful to me, and looking at all the metrics that was in there. I do have a question on table 1, the metric regarding spending per capita. Do you have data around the other comparative libraries or communities in the same metric?
So you're asking about whether or not we have other data for other libraries other than those that are included?
So the specific metric of spending per capita, I didn't actually see that for the other libraries.
Oh, we have it for digital spending, but we didn't pull it out for full collection spending, and that's what you're asking for,
yes,
correct?
I was just wondering, like, compared to the $4.04 adjusted for inflation, how do the other communities compare?
Yeah, we can do that. I can send that to you. I sent it out. Yeah.
Thanks, Avis. Further questions on this report? Bill?
Yeah, I'm just, when I was going through this, I was just wondering why, or how, not why, but how some of these other communities are spending a higher percentage of their operating expenditures on collection material over what Oakville is doing. I'm just wondering how, do you have any idea how they're actually doing that? Like, what's the trade-off?
I don't know offhand.
Yeah.
We could certainly have some conversations with, for example, Barrie, which is a very small
Yeah.
community up there, is outspending us significantly across 3 different libraries, whereas we have 7.
Right.
I can have a conversation with the CEO up there and just kind of see whether or not, is it just increased funding or do they have
Right.
other pieces? I'm not sure what they would be, but we can have that conversation.
Right. Because the other thing I was thinking was, if I look at, okay, there's like 7 communities there or something like that, or 6. And I mean, so, you know, it looks like the other ones are spending more. But I was just wondering, there's probably, well, obviously there's a lot more communities in Oakville. And I was just wondering where we might sit sort of in the grand scale. But it's probably difficult to get that kind of information, I would think.
No, the province gathers that. So all public libraries in Ontario have to report data to the province in order to receive our provincial grant. So they have it, and that's where this is all pulled from. We tend to use these comparator libraries for just about everything. We try and be consistent. We've identified them for the master plan. These are the comparators they're using as well. They're similar in demographics. They're similar in size. So that's why we kind of do it. I can absolutely provide you information for Toronto, but there's a significant scale difference.
Right.
Because Markham, Vaughan, Richmond Hill, like we have the data for all the GTA. It would be overwhelming to look at everybody. So we just try and pick the same comparators and use them consistently.
Okay. And the last thing is the 100,000, is that mostly for the Library of Things, or is this 100,000 for collections overall?
It's for collections overall. If you turn to page 26 of 70 or page 12 of 13, the collection plan, it highlights how the $100,000 would see those budget lines increase over time.
Right, okay.
So it would really be divided between adult print, juvenile print, audiovisual, and those, and you can see that some of them will get significantly more money than others for adult fiction. We
Okay.
actually do quite well. We have an endowment that helps us fund that already, the Jack and Jill Wood endowment. But you can see that juvenile would get a significant bump. So the percentages of the 100,000
Okay.
would be divided up between those different
Yeah,
buckets.
I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for pointing that out. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Further questions? I have a quick one. With respect to the adding donated books to the collection, is there a licensing issue there? Is that one of the considerations as a no?
No, that's one of the great things about physical books. Digital books, if somebody donated a digital book, we have no way at that point licensing would come in. But libraries have been doing that for decades, and there's never been a concern raised from publishers.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to receive this report then, please? Thank you, Avis, seconded by Rebecca. Thank you, not Rebecca, sorry, Meredith, all in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on to our next report, which is the Internet Access and Acceptable Use Policy Report.
Hello, everyone. So this policy is set for review. The last time we reviewed this policy was about 3 years ago, where we made substantial changes to it. So there's not too, as you can see from the first appendix, there wasn't too much change, just a few words here and there for the policy. But overall, this policy essentially applies to all members of the public utilizing OPL's internet services, both, the wired, the wireless, the servers, the networks, everything where within the branches that they would use our internet. So I open it up to the board for any questions.
Members of the board, questions on this report? Celso.
So the policy talks about certain traffic being blocked for good reasons. But in order for you to block this traffic, you have to monitor the traffic first. So suggestion is probably to add a paragraph or some language about your right to monitor, the fact that you're monitoring that will protect you.
Yes, so when you, I guess, on both the public service computers, laptops, as well as before you go on the public service, you have to accept the terms and conditions every single time before you enter. And all of that language is there. So it's not specifically in the policy because that's changing the policy we change every couple of years. So that based on what's happening and what we're monitoring and so forth, that changes, regularly.
Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, every time, whether it's on your laptop or the public service computers, it's there, you have to click.
Thanks also. Any further questions on this? That was an easy one. You got off easy, Joe.
I'll be back, don't worry.
So just on this one, just for clarification, so the amended policy is attached, and today we are accepting for review, we're receiving for review. I assume it's coming back for approval. So this is your opportunity. If you saw anything that you would like to have potentially strengthened or weakened or changed, this is your time to make those requests of the staff before it comes back, because this isn't simply just to receive and file. This is one of our jobs is to actually approve policy. So anything come to mind? Good. I thought it was pretty comprehensive as well. So thank you very much, Joe. Can I get a motion to receive this for review? Thank you, Celso. Thank you, Bill. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question? I'll get you in the minutes, I promise. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 6.3, Program Development and Delivery Policy Update.
So as Jeff just mentioned, we do bring policy for feedback and then for approval. You remember last month we brought the program development and delivery policy to you to add the addition of the reconsideration process. This is coming back to you for approval. The board did request that we add in a line about the role of the board as a potential appeal. I will just point out that this is inconsistent with our collection development reconsideration component to it. It is absolutely up to the board to make that decision, but I just wanted to flag that just is an inconsistency. Because the collection development, the reconsideration, I am the final say, and this has the final saying being the board.
Members of the board, questions on this particular policy? Andrew.
Thank you, Tara. Similar to what you just raised, I do have a question about the request to reconsider process. So on page 3 of 3, it says customers who object, et cetera, are encouraged to submit a written request using the form. Reconsideration requests are reviewed by the chief executive officer or designate.
Yeah, reconsideration requests are reviewed by the chief executive officer or designate, yes.
So far, so good? Okay. Then on page 6 of 3, it says this request will be reviewed by the manager of program development.
Okay, we can clarify that, yeah. Because generally it gets, it's reviewed and then the recommendation comes to me, but we can clarify that as part of the form.
Yeah, well, I guess that's my question. You know, should it go to manager program development, then the escalation goes to you, and then the final Court of Appeal is the board? Do we want to write that into the policy, I guess is the question.
Well, it is technically in there, a customer may appeal the decision to the board as the next line.
Yeah, it says the request for reconsideration will be reviewed by the chief executive officer, though. So what you're saying is the recommendation will go to the manager, from the manager of program development, always to you? I'm just wondering if we need to spell that out.
Well, I put in the designate because it can change based on the program, right? So it may be better suited that, you know, it goes to the program development manager. They're the ones who put it in place. If there's a director of innovation and integration, that the manager, that it may be they who make that recommendation to me, it may be the manager. So that's why that designate is there to provide some flexibility. Also, if I'm away, that somebody has the authority to do that. In there, but normally the first review is by the manager of program development because they're the one who put it in place and they know the reasoning behind it, and then they provide that information up, but I can absolutely see where you see that they don't connect, so we can clarify within the form, perhaps.
Maybe in the form, we even just add, you know, for example, this request will be reviewed by the manager of program development, and then something along the lines of with final review by the CEO, something to that effect.
Yeah, we can do something like that.
Secondarily, and much more minor, but I wanted to question the page numbering, because we've got a 3-page document with 6 pages in it. I thought that should be tightened up.
Oh, yeah. Well, the appendix is a separate document, so it definitely shouldn't have that, but it does have 4 pages to it, so thank you.
Okay, that's all, thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Further comments or questions? Celso?
You sounded a little concerned about the fact that there's inconsistency there in terms of the escalation procedures. Do you have a recommendation? Would you like to make them consistent? Just
I think it's worth having a discussion, whereas, because I don't know the answer, I guess, is what I'm saying. I just know that in the world where we're at right now, libraries are being consistently politicized. And our collections are being politicized, and our programs are being politicized. And we don't design our programs with that in thought, right? We design them for the community that we support. And so I would have no concern with this board. However, a future board, I may have concerns. And that's where my concern comes from, because boards change. And there are numerous examples in Ontario in the last 3 years that have seen senior library staff booted on these types of issues by the board and a changeover in board. So, which has then left those libraries susceptible to damage to their intellectual freedom. There's no right answer. That's the challenge, and that's my question, is that a really solid board absolutely, I think, lends gravitas to these decisions, but boards change. But I would also point out that even though it says that my decision is final, people can always come to the board. The board is my boss, so it is semantics to a certain degree as well.
would it make sense to give Tara an opportunity to bring this back to where it was before, where she had the final say?
Yeah, I have some comments on this before I come to you, because I had some experience with this week. Anybody else want to jump in, first-time speakers, before I jump in? Okay, Meredith, you're up.
I mean, and I think, just my thought as I'm processing this is that I think there is grounds to, well, it makes sense to me to have the two policies consistent, that a program could be politicized the same way that a collection material could be politicized. So to have one procedure for one part of what the library does versus another part, I think there is logic to keeping it consistent. So I would support keeping it consistent. Now, what is that process? I think is a bigger discussion for us to delve into as far as who gets the final and is there appeals. I don't want to delve into that but it sounds like we probably should.
Okay. Further first-time speakers? Okay, I'm going to take a kick at that, and then I'll come to you, Andrew. Recent experience has led me to do a lot of my own research and soul searching on this particular issue, because we've had some controversy around some books in our collection over the past couple weeks. I've had to respond to a number of them as direct constituents, and I responded to another on behalf of my colleagues yesterday or the day before, I don't remember when it was, on this very same issue. And in reflection, I mean, it's easy to have this as a theoretical conversation when you actually have to apply it to a specific circumstance where you really have to question the wisdom of where we're going with this, and that's where I am this week. So last month I would have been totally on side with, and I don't know, I may have been the one that suggested this, I'm not sure, But I'm absolutely opposed to us having the final say. And let me tell you why. Because just as Tara said, that although we're not a political board, we ultimately are, we serve at the pleasure of politicians. And I have just like Tara has no issue with this board, I have no issue with my colleagues on council right now. I think that they would probably side in the right decision. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the future holds. And I don't think that there's, in my opinion, certainly in reflecting on this and having to actually respond to constituents and people in town outraged by a couple books that, I actually read portions of and didn't particularly have any objection to it myself and did some research. My concern is that if intellectual freedom and collections and the right to access knowledge and information should not be political. It shouldn't matter if you're right, left, center, polka dotted, purple, whatever the case is. It should be universal. If we believe in intellectual freedom, we should believe in intellectual freedom. And we hire a CEO of the library to enforce that view. And yes, and Tara is correct that ultimately we still do have the decision at the end of the day, because if we disagree with her, we can fire her. And it would cost us a lot, but we could fire her. And that's, so, I mean, if we really felt, so it's a bit of a check and balance too, right? So I'm hearing some conversation, some questioning on this wisdom from last month. And while, again, I support it, I'm totally opposed to it now, because I do think that somebody who's properly trained and educated and deals with this on a daily basis and is empowered to uphold our policy of intellectual freedom and the library system and the whole library movement's policy of intellectual freedom, I think we need to make sure it's being left to the professionals. Because nobody, I don't know about this table, I mean, I know we have one library person's been, has a career in library governance, but the rest of us really don't have that qualification, whereas Tara does, and so do her colleagues. So that's my 2 cents worth. I think we should keep them consistent. I think we should keep ourselves out of this piece of it. We set the policy. That's where we ultimately have our say. Once we set the policy, we have to set it free and let the staff manage it. Okay, that's my 2 cents. Andrew, do you have 2 more cents?
I have nothing further.
No, okay. So, I hate to send it back, but I'm going to suggest that we send it back with some of the notes you made and also to remove that appeal process. Okay. That's my suggestion. Would somebody support that in a motion for me? Thanks, Celso. Thank you very much to Rebecca. Further discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Sorry to put you through all that.
No, it's a good discussion. I think it's important.
But sometimes actually going through the exercise and really giving it some significant thought and and actually reading what other libraries have done and what other jurisdictions. I read some scary stuff, especially from our friends to the south of us on how they manage these kind of situations. I don't ever want to be there, to be honest with you. Okay, next up is website statistics report, probably less controversial.
We can make it controversial.
No, please don't.
Yes, okay, so this one's just to receive for information. So last board meeting, there was a few questions around some of the statistics coming out of the quarterly report. So in analyzing these statistics and what was specifically asked, it made more sense for me to bring it back and have the chance to explain them to you. So there's a fairly thorough report, but just to kind of summarize some of the questions and some of the pieces that were specifically asked. First off, on the website, it goes into details, but it is essentially a completely different build. And what I mean by that is, we've, from 2019 to 2023, every aspect of it was changed. And one of the things that contributes to those sessions is the single sign-on. The single sign-on now, essentially, once you're logged in, it stays logged in for 30 minutes, and if you don't use it. So previously on the website, what would have happened was you would have went on the website and you would have jumped to the catalog and you would have jumped to the programs, which are different partners in different websites. You would have went then back into the website, which would have counted as a new session. Those are now counted as one session with the single sign-on because you remain signed in. So that attributes to a lot of what you see in the website statistics lines. The second one that came in was regarding the Bibliocommons login. The Bibliocommons login, why you see the drastic increase is we build that single sign-on portion on the Bibliocommons single sign-on. So we have a proxy that does all that stuff. But so in the past, in 2019, let's just call it, or even 2020, like when you signed on, when you used to go to BiblioCommons, it was just the catalog. So just a catalog of all the books, videos, music, and so forth. Now, BiblioCommons, you log into BiblioCommons essentially every time you log into the website and you put in your credentials, whether you use the catalog or not. So you see a lot of increase there within the catalog. The last one that we go into a little bit of detail is just regarding our application, our native app, through the App Store and through the Play Store, and just data retrieval from it. The big change of why we don't receive data anymore is essentially, so we went back, we asked, we did a deep dive, they don't have it. And what they commented is now every time you download the app or you can change it, you have the option to provide your information to the app developer. In doing so, they say roughly 25 to 30% of people actually do that and actually hit, yes, I want to send information. That's the only information they receive. So we only get a small, like a quarter portion of information. So it's essentially, it's not substantial to give any great results because all those pieces have changed substantially over the years. So the report goes into a lot of detail on those specific elements and the questions. But those were the main takeaways I took from last month's session about the quarterly reports and statistics. So I open it up to the board for any specific questions.
Members of the board, questions? Andrew, you're right off the mark.
Thanks, Joe. I'm wondering, and apologies if this is just me being thick, but when people are using the app and logging into their account, how are we not seeing that? Like they have to be connecting to our servers.
It counts as a BiblioCommons session. They don't have we know that they're on BiblioCommons because no information is sent to the app developer about what's what. They don't have that visibility.
But we know who they are because they're logged in.
We know they logged into BiblioCommons. We don't know if it's on their computer or the app. It's BiblioCommons, it's the catalog.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. But we know how many OPL patrons are logging in through BiblioCommons with 100% accuracy.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are but not through the app versus through the website.
That's fine. That just wasn't entirely clear. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Further comments or questions? I have, I want, just for clarification, so on the mobile side, so we are counting BiblioCommons sessions because they have to log in. But do we actually know about, do we have any metrics, like is there a metric as basic as how many times somebody accesses the app or we get zero information? Really?
0 right now.
Interesting, okay. And second thing is, this is a comment, validating the data between 2019 and 2023, just an anecdotal piece of information. I note that in 2019, the second most popular item to search for was job opportunities in the library, and in keeping with where we are today, it is the bottom. So from 28,000 inquiries about job opportunities to 5,197, which is very sort of typical of where we are today in our society. So thank you for the report. Members of the board, this is a receive report, so can I get a motion for that, please? Thanks, Bill. Thank you very much, Rebecca. All in favor? That's carried.
Thank you.
CEO update.
Perfect. So just a few project updates. This is the same as it was last month. The town is currently in negotiations with the successful contractor. However, a report is going to council on Monday that will determine how we move forward. So we'll be able to provide an update after Monday's council meeting. The Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Facilities Master Plan, we've completed our public consultation. Over the next couple months, Monteith Brown is going to be compiling all that information. We're going to get an initial look on June 23rd, and I'll present that initial look or the key pieces coming out of that at the July board meeting, as well as a timeline about how we're going to finalize that project. I believe it's targeted to finalize now. I need to check, but for January of 2025. So there might be some slight shifting there, but I will validate in July. So summer reading launches, this is one of our favorite times of year. With school coming to an end, the library jumps in to kind of try to prevent that summer slump for not only children, but also teens and adults. So we are about to launch summer reading. We have our official launch on Saturday, June 24th. This year's theme is Discover. We'll be hosting our kickoff celebration at Iroquois Ridge, while we're also including a reimagined creation zone. For those of you who have been to Glen Abbey, we have a very specific and dedicated creation zone. You walk in there, you see our laser cutter, you see our serger, you see our 3D printers, all of that is out. At Iroquois Ridge, it is essentially a program room. So what we've decided to do, or what they've been working on over the past little while, is actually trying to bring out more of the Creation Zone pieces into that space on an ongoing basis. So that's what we're launching on June 24th. There will be IMAX that'll be out and accessible. You won't necessarily have to ask for them. The Cricut machine will go there, the Budget Maker will go there, as well as other pieces of technology. I think the memory station, so if you want to take slides and digitize them, or VHS and digitize them, that will all be relaunched at Iroquois Ridge and will be out and available on a regular basis. We also have our app Beanstalk that we use for summer reading, so people can track their reading habits throughout the summer and enter to win prizes, which we're super excited about. And we're introducing some new programs, Curiosity Club. Notice that's our value, one of our values, curiosity. Cupcake Wars, Create It with Creative Bug, which is a database that we have with tutorials on how to knit, how to do crochet, how to cook, how to paint, all kinds of fun tactile habits or hobbies. And what we're really excited about is our second annual Cub Car races on the outdoor patio at Glen Abbey. They were hugely popular last year, and we're excited to see that grow this year. Drag Queen Story Time, this was an adventure, but in the end, the people who attended provided very, very positive feedback, and I think just proved to us about why we do this every year. There is a customer testimonial there. Roughly 40 attendees attended the story time, and out of the 12 surveys that were completed, 100% strongly agreed that the event was welcoming and inclusive, which is exactly what we were going for. We held two events, the story time in first, and then we had one a bit later where Faye and Fluffy kind of shared their journey. And I didn't get the opportunity to be in there, but my mother was visiting and she went in and she said it was very moving and very emotional, and there was a lot of love and connection happening in the room, which was really joyful to hear, because that's not what was happening outside. Seed Library update. So the Seed Library this year, staff packaged and distributed over 11,000 seed packets to our branches. So hopefully there is a lot of flourishing gardens happening throughout Oakville this year. We'll be following up through the summer with ongoing programs to encourage customers and teach them how to harvest their seeds and return them back into the Seed Library for next year. Bannock Bake Off, I think we have 12 teams registered, which is very exciting. I managed to wrangle my way onto the judging, which is happening on June 21st. So we're very excited for that event and hoping to make it an annual one moving forward. Book bikes are now out in the community. Our summer students are rolling out to hopefully a park near you. I've asked Joe to compile a bit of a schedule, and I'll send it out to the board in case you're curious or they're in your neighborhood, you can swing by. The first major event that they were at was the community play night at River Oaks on June 2nd, and then they will start being out in the community. Were they actually out in the community this week or next week? Next week. They will have small collections that people will be able to borrow, but they'll also be in the park doing different activities for children, and it's part programming, part marketing, to hopefully let people know about all the wonderful library of things pieces that we have out there and encourage them to move into the branch. The summer reading coordinators are also able to sign people up for cards on the spot, which is an exciting development.
Those guys look a little old to be summer students.
Oh, they love the camera, though. The Friends of the Library book sale is happening next week, always a popular event. It is happening Wednesday through Sunday, so feel free to stop by if you're looking for some summer beach reads. And then also welcome to Jeannie Lynn. Jeannie Lynn is my new executive assistant. She started on Monday, and I'm very excited about that. She comes to OPL with over 10 years of business administration and customer service experience. She's a Bachelor of Accounting and an MBA, and she has a deep passion for libraries and a deep personal understanding of the importance that they play in newcomers' lives. So it's exciting to have somebody with her background as well as her passion for libraries come on board. So we're excited to have her.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Sorry, I was waiting for a concluding remark.
Nope.
Members of the board, questions for Tara? Rod?
Yeah, I just, could we go back to the image of the book bike just for a second there?
Sure. So we designed it to look like a Dickie D because it made me happy.
Oh, could you put it full screen? I just wanted to look at something. Okay, you can see it, I can't. That's
IT,
okay.
can we bring
Here's the
that
deal.
slide up,
It's all
please?
right. Oh yeah, I guess everyone would like to see
Yeah.
what I'm about to talk about.
There you go.
From a safety perspective, when that's going along a road, wouldn't it be better if it had a flag up on the back? Just to give that sort of double exposure for a relatively slow-moving bicycle. I'm just a bit concerned about safety looking at that.
Yeah, we can absolutely look at that. I will say they're electric bikes,
It's an
which we
elec-
put in place just to make sure that we weren't destroying their legs. But we can definitely look at putting a flag on the back. It definitely wouldn't hurt. Added security is always a goal for the students.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions or comments?
Oh, yeah, and Joe also mentioned that we did put them through significant amount of bike training that the recreation department helped us with about how to navigate the road safety and all of that as well. But I hear you about the flag for sure.
I do have a question. I could have asked this of you offline, but I'll ask it here. In terms of the creation zones, have we considered or do we have digitization available of home movies? Is that something that we offer?
We do offer that. Right now, it's only available at Glen Abbey.
Okay.
But over the summer, we are rolling that memory piece out to additional branches.
Okay.
So I can provide an update in July on what that schedule looks like. But right now, Glen Abbey has the slides as well as the VHS and CD to digital.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking more of old Super 8 and 8 millimeter films. We're getting to a point in history where those are starting to be diminished or I guess literally destroyed through vinegar syndrome and a few other reasons why film just starts to disintegrate. It would be an interesting opportunity to get some people in the library that might have these old Super 8 and 8 millimeter films kicking around and digitize them. I know there are companies that do it.
Yeah.
Most of them are in the U.S. There's some locally as well, but I think it'd be an interesting opportunity to bring a new demographic into the library as well.
No, we can absolutely look at what that equipment would be like, yeah.
Thank you. Last call for comments or questions? Yes, Meredith.
I was just curious, we talked a lot about preparations for the Pride Week activities and the drag story time. And so amazing to hear how it went. And I was just curious if there was any, reflections, hindsight reflections on, if you would have changed or any learnings to be carried through into next year.
Yeah, there's a couple things that we definitely learned. We did, as I indicated to the board, we did have a police presence, which I think was important on the day. However, it was interesting how many conversations I had to have with customers who were concerned about the police presence. So I think we'd look at managing that a little bit differently. Through conversations with the police, they recommended that we don't hold it in a branch again, simply because the Flay and Fuffy had to walk across the entire branch to get to the program room. In previous years, we held that event at QEP in the black box, which has, of course, the green room in the back, and just provides a more secure space for them, and also an ability to better control access. We did have people who were protesting outside come in and try and look through windows, and we're doing a lot of pacing around, which wouldn't be possible in a more theater environment like we had done previously. So I think those are things that we'll have to look at in the future. We held it in Glen Abbey because our original plan fell through a little bit at the last minute, so that was our solution to it. But we'll just make sure that we plan further in advance if we hold this next year.
I will say that from a councillor's perspective, we on council did get some flack from the community. I don't know anybody on council that did not support it or did not back up the library for their programming, but they're as enlightened as Oakville is most of the time, there are some folks that took serious exception at it, as well as I think that's what precipitated some of these book questions as well. So yeah, that's, I think based on what I've read about other communities that have gone through this experience, I think that Oakville came off fairly unscathed in the grand scheme of things. So
No, agreed.
congratulations
Well,
to the
and just
team.
about like, we talk a lot about the customer code of conduct and updating it, and just, I was curious if there was any issues in, like, for the staff and their, feelings of personal safety, or their need to enforce the code of conduct, and if there's any learnings from that respect.
I will say that during the event, I was present and I had some conversations. The protesters chose to protest on the street to the traffic versus protest in front of the library, which we weren't actually expecting. We thought that they would be more interested in the library, but they chose to have their signs out on the street. I will say that in the days preceding, it got to the point where I instructed staff to no longer answer the phones. If people left a voicemail, they would return the voicemail, but the amount of vitriol that was coming through the phones was exceptional. Interestingly, the majority of people did not leave voicemails. So there wasn't a break in service, because there isn't always an expectation that you're going to answer the phone immediately, but it came to the point where I did tell staff they no longer had to answer the phone, because it wasn't good. It was really bad.
Okay, thank you. Further comments or questions one last time? Can I get a motion to receive this report? Rod, how about you? There we go. Rod's in the minutes. Seconded by? Thank you very much. Rebecca, all in favor? That's received. Members of the board, I want to draw your attention to 7.1. We have something to discuss here, so I need a motion to go into a session closed to the public. And the reason for that is, in accordance with the Municipal Act, we are going into a meeting closed to the public to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including a municipal or local board employee. So having said that, I would ask for a motion to go in closed session. Rod, thank you very much. Seconded by Bill, thank you very much. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, it is 7:53. We can probably combine a short break as well. So let's reconvene in closed session at 8 o'clock.
I'm currently in my first of 3 years at Sheridan, so it's kind of fun to be at that point because you have all great ideas and you're not limited by actual technology. Sheridan College, in the glass department here, they ran a bit of a competition amongst the students. I submitted my design and then it got sent off. One of the things that I did before I submitted my design to the town was I had a talk with the actual professors to make sure that it was doable.
It'll look not unlike this. The central piece will actually have a wave in it. It's got this oak leaf shape to it. When you look down on it, it'll have a nameplate on there, and then
when it comes out of the mold, it looks not unlike this. It'll be on the end of the pipe, and we just break it off, and we put that in to cool. And then when it's done, we saw it off right about here, and polish the bottom. So of course this one's been sawn already.
The process of the thing kind of goes like we start out with a spike of glass. We form we take a gather and we form it into kind of a conical piece of glass. And then we get a couple of what we call gathers. We gather glass on the end of a rod, and then we roll it in colored powder, which is basically really finely crushed glass with color in it. Then we melt that in. We roll it a few times just to make sure that it's got lots of solid color on it. What we do is we take molten glass out of the furnace and we roll it in this colored powder, the glass color, and it sticks. It'll stick to the glass, the hot glass. And then what we do is we take it over to the glory hole and we melt it in. So the glory hole gets it nice and hot, reheats the glass. Once it's melted in nice and neat, I'll take it over to Paul there and he'll stick it on a piece. But I want to get it pretty hot so that I don't have I get a nice small trail for him. And then we apply that onto our spike, right? So we have two colors. We have two guys doing it basically. We'll lay on one color, then we'll flip it over and we'll lay on the other color. So we have basically 3 rods of color together, right? Because we don't want the glass to cool off too much after he's done it, after he's formed his spiky bit there. We don't want the glass to cool off too much, and we don't want to have to reheat it over and over and over again. So it takes 2 of us with bit rods to form 2 colors, just so that we can put the one color on and then put the next color on. And then go and melt them together, because if we put one color on and then he melts it together, then we put another color on and he melts that in, it could melt in kind of a weird blurred shape. So if we put them both on at the same time, then they melt at the same rate, and that makes it much more crisp and nicer.
And so now we laid the color on the center bit, and we just have to melt the color in so it becomes one smooth pattern. Because if there's any seams or anything where the color is, when we plunge it into the middle, it's going to catch bubbles there. So that'll be little imperfections in the design.
Then we'll melt them together so that they're smooth without a lot of edges, because if we have a lot of edges, we'll trap air, and we didn't want a ton of extra bubbles or special design of bubbles, so we wanted to make sure that it's all nice and smooth. Then what we do is we extrude it out a bit lengthwise and give it a twist, a nice slow twist, and that gives it kind of that helix of color. In this you can see the spike color, but it has this nice, about 2 revolutions worth of color, in 2 revolutions of twist in color. Then we put a bit of a wave into it, so it looks kind of more like a flame. They're dirt from gravity, so this puts a nice bend in it. Then we have a graphite mold that's made out of a big block of graphite. It's a 2-part mold, so it splits in half basically. I'll get a ladle of glass out of the furnace, a big ladle of glass, and we pour that into the mold so it's full. And then the guy who formed the spike with a twist in it plunges that into the mold. So we plunge it straight down into the mold. We let it cool off a little bit so that it firms up, because glass is kind of like taffy, after a few minutes. We wait a little bit longer and it seizes up a little bit more. It's still flexible, but not solid.
Just doing this to cool the edges here, set it up a bit.
Then we pull it out of the mold and we flash it in the glory hole, and that's to even out the heat. but also the flame in the glory hole will polish the one end. So this end here gets its smooth surface from what we call flame polishing.
And so we have to let it completely set up before we put it away. Otherwise, if we put it away too hot, it's gonna deform when it's in the annealer. The internal heat in it will actually like deform the piece.
Yeah, the heat actually moves kind of slow, and the internal heat will come out to the external part of the piece, and then when it sits on the grating in the annealer, because the shelves are great, it can actually take on the shape of the grating if it was too, like if it becomes too hot. When the annealer itself isn't that hot, even though it feels like it. When you stick your head in there, it feels like it. It's not hot enough to actually deform, but the interior of the piece could be 300, 400, 500 degrees warmer than the actual exterior, and then that soaks out to the outside.
Yeah, the annealers are at like 500 degrees, and these furnaces are at like 2,000.
Yeah. Then we wait for a while until it seizes up. As soon as it stops moving, then we'll break it off and we'll put it in the annealing oven.
Now we're just creating a stress point in the glass. Like this is a really cool part now, so if I hit the glass, all the vibrations are gonna stop at that one point.
Then it'll sit in the annealing oven for about 57 hours. And that cools down slowly. And what it does is it takes all the stress out of the glass. Because all the forming that we do causes inconsistent heating throughout the glass, right? And even though we're flashing it and doing all kinds of things to it to try and even out the heat, it'll still have inconsistent heat through it. So what we do is we put it in the annealing oven and it bathes it in a 550 degrees Celsius for a good 25 hours or so. Well, everything in a glass shop is a team effort, right? So I came up with the design. You know, it's my design, but that doesn't mean that I'm the one who carries things out. I mean, there are a number of artists like that. They actually just design it, and somebody else actually makes the thing. In this case, I've got the skill set that allows me to help out, right? And then plus I get to supervise. I get to look and see what's going on. Some other first-year students that are there are Paul Vandenbiggert. He's the one who's putting the twist in the glass. He's quite good at it, so we figured why reinvent the wheel for one of us to figure that out. And then there's Matt Crosby, and Matt's helping out with everything else, bringing bids, opening the door. You need to have a hand in the glass shop because there's so many things that are really hot that you just can't do it. You just can't hold a pipe in one hand and try and open the door with the other hand. Especially with this thing, it weighs too much. It's a good 5-10 pounds of glass on there. So it's important that I get Paul and Matt to help out. Each one will be unique. It'll be at least slightly different. No matter how much we wanted them to be exactly the same, they'll always be a little bit different just because of how we did it. The shape of this award, it takes on the shape which is actually an oak leaf. So if you look at it, it's oak leaf shaped, right? And that's, of course, Oakville's own built-in iconography. So what we did is we placed these spirals of color in the center to kind of symbolize an inner flame. So it's kind of like the inner fire that runs the town. So the volunteers have, are this energy that runs the town, and you don't get anything done without having a good core of volunteers willing to do the things that need to be done. So I thought it was important to have that in there, and it also kind of symbolizes the inner fire of the actual people who are volunteers, because they have to have a certain dedication that you don't see. So it's kind of a dual meaning in that regard. You've got the inner fire of the town and the inner fire in the people who are the inner fire of the town. The complexity of the piece actually requires that you have a few extra hands, especially when we've got a two-part mold. one guy plunges the piece into the mold, but he can't let go of the pipe to try and extract it. So it takes another two people to try and separate the mold off of it, because it can stick. Glass can get sticky at that temperature, and it can get stuck in the mold. And if we leave it in there too long, it's just going to crack. So we'll have a ruined piece at that point. So because graphite really sucks the heat out of the glass, right? It's like doing anything with it, touching metal to the glass, it'll suck the heat out of the glass. So it takes a couple of guys in there, sometimes prying, sometimes physically holding on to the mold with a pair of gloves on, and then Paul can pull it up out of there once it's out, once it's been freed. It's important to pull up vertically so that we don't snap off some of the vertical striations in the mold, like these bits in here. That's solid graphite in the mold, and if we twist it, we can snap them off, and then we've ruined the mold, and we don't want to do that, right? It takes a while to cut one of those things because it's 6 inches thick. So it takes a few hands to get things done. This is actually my first time in Oakville. It's a very nice town. Everybody's really nice here, and it's almost surprising, like how nice everyone is in Oakville, and also how dedicated volunteers are, and how important it is to actually give them some kind of award to recognize what they do. So it was great for me to sit down and go, hey, I get to make this thing.
Volunteers are basically selfless. It's selfless service. It's really giving to others. I know for sure that they're not in doing their volunteer work expecting to be recognized and to be thanked. But it really is, from my perspective, an enormous honor to be able to make this year the awards that will actually recognize them and thank them for the work that they do. Volunteers are the creatures that operate maybe between earth and sky and that keep a community together. The Community Spirit Award for this year is a functional box. That was the request from the committee. I had proposed something that would go on the wall, but it has actually the box itself has a lot of the elements that of my initial proposal. My initial proposal did include this waterfront line delineating the difference between the sky and the earth. So that has been retained in the box. The process of making the boxes has included working with 2 different clay bodies. One that's very groggy, a bit like having sand in it, so it's very textured, and the other one is a porcelain for the temperature that I'm firing to. So the interesting part about these 2 clay bodies is that they're really quite different. One is very smooth, and the other one is this, as I say, more textured, has more almost like sand in it. If you were to feel it with your fingers, you feel more of it's just different to tactile. But these 2 different clays dry differently, and they want to almost go in opposite directions. So it's kind of interesting to work with them in a way that puts them together to come to the awards, which are the boxes.
Vanessa has come a long way in terms of solving a lot of technical problems this year, and it's because she's really set for herself some technical challenges, working with different types of clays and trying to combine them together in a single piece, a single object. As a ceramic artist, that sort of sets you up for trouble. And Vanessa went in knowing that, and she's been strategic in finding ways to sort of respond to those challenges. And it's really boosted her technical skills for sure.
This is why my little note here on that, it's like, yes.
You're going to get different sorts of responses by working with a hollow, right, where the glaze is going to collect and flow.
Oh, then when it's going to
And that's
drip.
not really representational of the kinds of forms that you're making,
Yeah,
where
right.
it's going to be, there are little grooves, small areas where it's going to be gathering together, but generally speaking, it's going to flow over.
And then this, all I do is, it's not an elegant process. There. So, see it there? It's come out. It's maybe even a bit distorted. And then take this magic tool, which I do not know if it has a name, and hope for the best. So highly unsophisticated. I'm cutting through this box. So now I have two pieces, one that's sort of showing the irregularities and the very hopefully straight cut lid. Once those are put aside, then I return to the same mold, and using the grogged clay now with the globs, I use globs, I press them into the mold. And at a certain point, I then take one of the halves of the porcelainous piece, flip it over into the mold. And so what I'm visually looking at that point is I'll have some porcelainous clay, some space, and almost the grog clay below. And then I'll take more of the grog clay, fill it all in. And what I'm doing there is joining both the porcelainous and the grogged clay. And at that point, I'm really compressing the clay and forming the shape that's going to be in the inside. And that process takes a fair amount of time. And then when that piece, when the mold has absorbed some of the moisture from the actual clay, I flip that out. And then I put together overnight what is now the base of the clay, the base of the box, and the lid. I put them together without the lip, and I actually dry them inverted with a lot of plastic to keep the moisture in. So it's actually not drying, it's just settling, which is sort of an important part of this process. I let that happen overnight, and then the next day I will put the lip into the box, the rim. It's beautiful. I like the way it's so soft by comparison. It's not up to scratch. I know. Noodle's got extremely high standards.
The program at Sheridan is really intense. It takes over your life in ways that you couldn't possibly predict. And the more you learn about it, the more you want to know. And the more you experiment and learn about the materials, you realize that it never ends and that there's always something new and exciting to do with ceramics. And I think that's what's amazing about Sheridan, is that it's a really transformative 3 years.
In order to create the lip of the box, I will first either roll out a slab, a bit like you do with pastry, or I will pass it through our slab roller. Either way, I've got something that looks very much like pastry, and then I cut strips to the size that I want. So I'm able to cut it and create the lip. Then I cut that lip at an angle, and I soften it and I clean it up. So what is lovely about this porcelain is that I can actually use the sponge fairly liberally on it. I can smoothen out the lines where I want them. The last detail that I put on a box is, of course, the writing. So I've chosen to write in script on the boxes. And there is an exhibition of the graduating class of all studios. So it includes textiles, glass, furniture, and ceramics, of course. So that was very exciting. It was very, very, it was very successful in the sense that we had people coming in there till about 10 o'clock at night. So there were people on the sidewalk, the galleries were full, the work was great. So a great opportunity as a student to start, exhibiting our work and showing our work. And that process is also very interesting because once your work becomes public, there's a whole new dialogue that starts happening.
So, I mean, I think that dialogue of privacy is a real important part of what she's been doing with her thesis work. And that's why I think, in a lot of ways, the fact that she's taken those pieces and being been inspired to work more publicly in relation to this commission makes those pieces really interesting.
Once it goes through the bisque firing, then I glaze them, and that's a bit of a slow process. Oakville is my home. I haven't often worked in Oakville, but I have always lived almost in Oakville since my family and I arrived in Canada. We came from Argentina in 1985. This area is, to the family, very important. The pieces are glazed inside and outside, and there is different glazes for different reasons. As I glaze the inside, both the lid and the box, with a clear glaze. This cleaning off can actually be done at different times. The glaze will come out. Once that is done, then I will glaze the lid and the part of the box that is, whether referring to the lake or the sky with the glaze. And then once that is on, we put the pieces in the kiln for the glaze firing, which is about 16 hours of firing, and then another 16 to 20 of just cooling down before the pieces can be taken out. It says 60 degrees, fair to open. And I can move my hands because it's not so hot. Yes, it works. Most important that it works for the recipient. But yes, I think we have, we've got texture, we've got lines, we've got, the handwritten note, as I try to think of script. I know it's not what we use the most, being so accustomed to text messages, but handwriting does have a connotation of something personal, and these recipients are receiving and are being acknowledged on a very personal activity. So I kind of like that idea. I debated what type of script to put, and then I thought, okay, just handwriting works. So that's what it is.
Together, my wife and I were designers, Myself, I'm a shop guy. I like making stuff. I like getting into the studio early and taking care of business. Trying to figure out how to make something and what the best way to make something will be.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
So it'll be in about there.
Perfect.
Like
You get to keep some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's a neat.
I like that.
That's a neat thing. I wonder how it'll stay with. Should finish up okay.
Yeah.
I actually first met both Joseph and Dana about 4 years ago as students at the Sheridan College Craft and Design program, and both were studying in the furniture studio. Right from the start, both Joseph and Dana have been very active in the field of woodworking, and it's also been my pleasure to see them move from students into building a collaborative design studio and production house called DJ and JB, and which also kind of playfully references their own relationship as husband and wife.
Dana and I work very closely together. What do you think? We always bounce our ideas off each other. We work as a team. I think in coming up with how these awards have turned out, Dana's been just pushing me always to do more and to just dig in to the project. Basically for me to explore and dive into the making of these awards. A lot of it is on me as the guy who's in front of the lathe or doing most of the actual work and shaping of these things, to actually treat each piece with its own intention. And then she kind of swoops in and adds whole other layers of meaning. She sees things that maybe I haven't seen and adds context and support. So it'll be in about there.
So as a collaborative team, they have developed to produce a really flexible and modern selection of work, and they always focus on using local materials, sustainable practices.
So Dana and I started JB plus DG while we were in school together. The acronym is our initials, Joseph Bowman plus Dana Gedney.
We're at Blossom and Bloom at Union Station in Toronto. It's a 2-day craft fair. We do one of these every 2 to 3 weeks throughout the summer. Depending on our booth size, we bring what we can, and because it is a flower show, we've brought our planters and some of the paper flowers I've started making, and some wall hangings and mobiles.
So when it came time to establish a name for a business, that just seemed like apt. It's who we are, it's a bit of a love story, and it's simple. So our own approach is the simplest expression of an elegant idea. Well, I'm the studio technician at the Wood Studio at Queen Elizabeth Park Community and Cultural Center. And I get to talk shop with residents every day I'm here and help out with projects and just hang out in the Wood Studio all day with people. I think specifically this community center is amazing. This is a space that when it opened, I remember being intensely jealous of the first technician who scored the gig that I have now. Very intensely jealous. For me, it's kind of a coveted gig. I like the role. You get to meet a lot of people. You get to help out with a lot of projects. I get to do a lot of thinking about how I might solve a problem without actually having to solve that problem myself. I get to offer my advice and then see how that project plays out. So it's fun, it's rewarding, and it opened up a lot of opportunities. The fun part's over, and now the work begins.
What I know about Joseph and Dina's studio practice is that they've put a lot of hard work into building something that works both in terms of what they want to do creatively and what their customers are looking for. And so they have a really beautiful range of products that are very modern and aesthetic, but that are also very customizable, and that they're using local woods and sustainable practices.
I try not to be too precious about any of the material. I believe that the material is going to work. It's wood, it's beautiful, it has beautiful natural characteristics that I know I can turn into something that others will enjoy. And you kind of believe in that process and believe in the skill and craftsmanship and the eye and the hand and go from there. The theme that we're starting from is volunteerism. So there's something in volunteering your time that is altruistic. It's caring for another person, a place. It's something completely outside of yourself. It's nurturing something. And so we thought it would be appropriate to present awards that had a bit of that in them. So they're vessels for succulent plants. They're all individually beautiful vessels for plants.
We chose succulents. We chose a variety of succulents and little trees to give some interest and color and layers. We actually get our plants from a nursery. A neighbor of ours has a small nursery in the East End where she grows everything from, she has her mother trees, and she grows everything from cuttings and the little succulents.
In our line of work, it's a rare opportunity to put that amount of time into something. So these pieces have been babied. They've been well loved. And I've been over every inch of them for hours, and it's been joyous. It's been a very enjoyable experience. If somebody comes in to see me at the queue and they really need help with something, there's a lot that I get out of helping people with their projects here. It's been my experience that I guess giving of your time, knowledge, and effort is kind of its own reward in a way.
It should be reasonably well understood that each piece was made by hand, and that each image is different for that reason. So it's very clear that I'm not using any sort of mass-produced or mass production technique. What I'm using are tools and my own hands to carve each piece out individually. This is really about the handmade process or the maker's mark in that sense. The process of throwing, essentially, whether you're making a cup or a vase or a bowl, the process is essentially the same. It starts with wedging your clay, preparing the clay, making sure it's nice and even and consistent for throwing. You want to avoid air bubbles or chunks or bits. So you wedge that clay to get it nice and even. It goes onto the wheel. First step is centering, which involves holding the clay in place so that, basically, the whole idea is not to force the clay, but to be nice and steady so that the clay centers itself onto the wheel, at which point you're ready to open it up. What most people love about clay is the feeling that it provides infinite possibility and opportunity. It may look like mud at first glance, but it's basically mud that can hold its shape. That can be carved, it can be wheel thrown, it can be pressed into sheets, it can be shaped into pretty much any idea that comes to mind, provided it has a physical form, or it can express things without physical form in a different way as well. It really is a material without much limitation, except for the limitation that we provide. So it has the opportunity to provide almost a limitless canvas for the artist. All right. So I've centered, I've opened up the pot. Now I'm ready to pull up the wall. Just basically getting the height of the piece. It took me at least 2 years to become a proficient thrower, like to a point where I was happy with what was coming out. But at this point, I've had about 15 years worth of throwing experience, and I can honestly say that my throwing is better now than it was in the past. although it's changed to some degree as well. But it's definitely an ongoing process because there's always room to grow. There's fine tuning that happens in each shape. So the more it's one of those activities. The more you do, the better you become at it. And then after you've pulled, you're going to do the fine tuning details in terms of adjusting the shape. So pretty much everything starts with a cylindrical form, and then you sort of work your way out from there. I think for most clay artists, the process is definitely very personal from beginning to end. So we think of an idea, and then it's our job to bring that idea to life into an object, or a sculptural piece, or what have you. But it's a personal process. It's a journey where we have to give something a life of its own. What I love about the Potter's Wheel is partly just the process. It's an enjoyable process to work with the wheel, but also it provides a degree of structure. It can help you generate a shape much faster than building at the table. But then it's up to the individual or the artist to understand what they can do with that shape. If it can become more than what it is, if it's necessary, or if it isn't, it's simply a beautiful shape on its own. I've been teaching here at Queen Elizabeth Park Community Cultural Center for roughly 2.5 years, or 3 years. My first experience was intro to throwing, actually to Town of Oakville staff. We had a great time. And I've since taught kids classes, adult classes, intro to ceramics. Generally speaking, though, in the past, I'd focused more on, I was focusing more on the one-off courses. So we have a variety of weekend warrior workshops, which are just a chance for parents, kids, or just adults and whatnot to come in, get an experience working in clay, without having to enroll in a full class. But it's been a ton of fun. We've made everything from teapots to piggy banks to handmade bowls, wheel throwing workshops, and we have tons more coming up. Just this week coming, we'll have a wind chimes workshop. So there's a ton of different things happening in terms of teaching. Okay, yeah. Yeah, you guys, you're all getting off to a good start. I think everybody's getting off to a good start. Okay. Okay, how's my horse coming along? Does that look better? A little bit?
You have to smoothen it out.
Yeah, but I'm smoothing it, yeah. That's what I've been working on. Yeah, that's a good idea. About making the shape of it, okay? So here, I'm gonna help you make a couple coils. So I'm gonna take some of this off. Do you wanna do this? I've seen kids of all ages and backgrounds enjoying the creative process. Sometimes it's about expressing an idea. Sometimes it's about recreating their favorite cartoon. You name it. I've seen a lot of different things come out of that place in terms of creativity from kids. But most importantly, I think it's given them a medium to express themselves. When it comes to the carved work, it tends to be the side of myself that's a little more serious or classical in the sense of work that's supposed to be quiet, in the sense of not overly whimsical or not too pop culture, but more about being classically beautiful in the sense of aesthetically beautiful. But I guess I've been carving for quite some time in clay. It's been a while, but I guess I really only started carving more seriously, let's say in about the last 10 years or so. It is a time-consuming practice, so it's not something you can do every day, just because you still have to get the other pieces made. So if you're devoting a lot of time to carving it really does slow down the rest of your practice.
The carving that he's doing, which has, I feel like, a more serious feeling to it, and he's very skilled at carving and at all kinds of fine details that, for me, I'm amazed by, because that's something I don't have access to. The particular work that he's doing for this commission. It's nice for me to see because it's kind of a return to something I haven't seen him do in a while, and I think it's really beautiful.
We think of ourselves as independent artists working out of the same space. So the studio itself actually doesn't even have a name on the front of the shop. This is basically where we work, but we each kind of do our own thing.
It's really nice to have a cooperative environment. We're sharing a space, but we're all individually our own businesses, but we help each other when we need to, and it's also nice when you're working long hours to have other people around.
We're actually very different in terms of our working style, although we all work in clay. It's very clear and obvious whose work is whose. But we take advantage of the fact that we all work in the same medium and share equipment to help ease the cost of having a studio in the city. This award was actually the first that I carved. So it's kind of as much it's the first, it's also the prototype for the whole series. But pretty much it's a simple carving, predominantly a field of oak leaves. And they're overlapping and interwoven to some degree, but the main idea was just to kind of keep it loose and slightly or more or less an organic form as opposed to a more rigid stylized carving. This specific
crowd outside seems to disappear.
Darn. I was hoping to sell them popcorn after the fact. Are we streaming again? Thank you. I will report that, first of all, we are back in open session. To those who may be watching us on YouTube, I want to report that we met in session closed to the public to discuss matters of regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and direction was given to the staff at that time. Members of the board, we have finished our agenda. I will ask you at this time, do you have any new business to bring before the board today? I am not seeing any new business, so I will note that our next meeting is
July 19th.
July 19th?
20th.
July 20th at 7 o'clock, right here. Be there, here or be square. I guess it doesn't work. It's be there or be square, but I can't say there because we're here, right? Okay. So that's the next meeting. Motion to adjourn, somebody? Rod, boy, he's excited to leave. Oh, that's amazing. And Meredith, thank you very much. All in favor? That's carried. This meeting's adjourned. Thanks for your work this evening, folks. That was great.